The mirror had been her enemy for 3 years, reflecting back the twisted landscape of scar tissue that mapped the left side of her face like a cruel topography of that October night when the kitchen fire changed everything. Sarah Chen pressed her fingertips against the raised ridges, feeling the familiar tightness that pulled at her mouth whenever she tried to smile, which wasn't often anymore. The plastic surgeon in Denver had done what he could, but insurance only covered so much, and hope had a price tag she couldn't afford. The diner's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as she refilled coffee cups with mechanical precision, keeping her scarred side angled away from customers who either stared too long or looked away too quickly. Both reactions carved deeper wounds than any flame ever could. She'd perfected the art of moving through the world sideways, like a crab, protecting its soft shell, always calculating angles and shadows. Hey, if you're watching this story unfold and feeling that pull to connect, hit that subscribe button right now and drop a comment telling me where in the world you're experiencing this moment with me. And don't forget to smash that hype button, because stories like this need your energy to reach the hearts that need them most. You're not just watching, you're part of this journey, and honestly, it would feel incomplete without you here. The bell above the door chimed, and Sarah glanced up from wiping down table 6 to see a figure silhouetted against the late afternoon sun. Tall, wearing a weathered cowboy hat that had seen more honest work than most people managed in a lifetime. His boots carried the dust of distant places, and when he removed his hat, revealing silver-streaked hair and eyes the color of storm clouds, something in her chest shifted like tectonic plates, finding new ground. He chose the corner booth, the one where the light was kindest, and Sarah approached with her order pad clutched like armor. "Coffee?" she asked, angling her body in the practiced way that hid the worst of the damage. "Please." His voice carried the weight of open spaces and long silences. "And whatever pie you'd recommend." She poured the coffee, noting how his hands wrapped around the cup, calloused but gentle, the hands of someone who knew how to coax life from reluctant soil. "Apples fresh today." "Apple it is." He looked up then, meeting her eyes directly, and Sarah felt the familiar urge to turn away. But something in his gaze held her. Not pity, not curiosity, just a quiet attention that felt like sunlight after a long winter. The pie slice was generous, the crust golden and flaking, and she set it down with the careful efficiency she'd perfected. "Anything else?" "Company, if you're not too busy." The words hung in the air like dust motes in afternoon light. Sarah glanced around the nearly empty diner. Just old Pete reading his paper in booth 3 and the teenage couple sharing a milkshake by the window. "I should what? Keep hiding that beautiful face?" The words hit her like a physical blow. Beautiful. When was the last time anyone had used that word in connection with her? She touched her cheek instinctively, feeling the familiar ridges and valleys of scar tissue. "You need glasses. 20/20 vision last I checked." He took a bite of pie, chewed thoughtfully. "Name's Jack Morrison. Been driving cattle from Montana to Texas for more years than I care to count, and I've seen a lot of faces in a lot of places. Yours is one I won't forget." Sarah felt heat rise in her cheeks, the unmarked side flushing while the scarred side remained pale and tight. "Sarah Chen, and you're either blind or lying." "Neither." Jack set down his fork, leaned back in the booth. "You know what I see when I look at you? Strength. The kind that comes from walking through fire and choosing to keep walking." The coffee pot trembled in her hand. No one talked about the fire. No one acknowledged what had happened, as if pretending the scars were invisible would somehow make them disappear. "You don't know anything about me. I know you survived something that would have broken most people. I know you get up every morning and face a world that's forgotten how to see past surfaces. And I know that when you smiled at that little girl earlier, yes, I saw it, your whole face lit up like sunrise over the Rockies." Sarah remembered the moment he meant. A 6-year-old with pigtails had dropped her coloring book, and when Sarah bent to retrieve it, the child had looked up with pure, uncomplicated joy and said, "Thank you, pretty lady." For just an instant, Sarah had forgotten to hide. That was different. Kids don't. Kids see truth. Adults learn to lie. Jack pushed the pie plate toward her. "Share this with me. It's too good to eat alone." She shouldn't. Every instinct screamed at her to retreat, to maintain the careful distance she'd constructed between herself and the possibility of hurt. But something about the way he waited, patient as a man, accustomed to watching seasons change, made her slide into the booth across from him. The pie was good, sweet, and tart, and warm. They ate in comfortable silence, and Sarah found herself stealing glances at his face, weathered but kind, with lines that spoke of laughter, and squinting into distant horizons. A small scar bisected his left eyebrow, and she wondered what story it held. How did it happen? The question escaped before she could stop it. Jack touched the scar absently. "Bull named Tornado. Thought he could fly, and I was fool enough to think I could teach him otherwise. Learned that day that some things can't be broken, only respected. I meant," she gestured vaguely at her own face. "I know what you meant, but I told you my story first. Fair's fair." The words came slowly, like water seeping through cracked earth. The kitchen fire 3 years ago, her ex-boyfriend's cigarette left burning on the counter while he passed out drunk on the couch. Her desperate attempt to save their apartment, their life together, their future. The explosion when she tried to move the gas canister, waking up in the hospital to learn that David had left while she was in the medically induced coma, unable to face what his carelessness had cost her. "He said he couldn't look at me anymore," she finished, the words bitter as burnt coffee. "Said I reminded him of his mistakes." Jack's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Then he was a fool and a coward, and you're better off without him." Easy to say. True to say. He reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers where they rested beside the empty pie plate. "Sarah, look at me." She did, though it cost her. "You are beautiful. Not despite your scars, not in spite of them. Because of everything you are. Everything you've survived, everything you choose to be, every single day. That fire didn't destroy your beauty. It revealed it." Tears she'd held back for months threatened to spill over. "You don't understand. People stare, they whisper. Children point. Some do, but that says everything about them and nothing about you." His thumb traced across her knuckles, a touch so gentle it made her chest ache. "I've been alone on the road for 15 years, Sarah. Lost my wife to cancer, lost my ranch to drought and debt, lost my way for a while there, thought I was done with feeling anything real. Then I walk into this diner and see a woman who's been through hell and still has kindness in her eyes, still takes time to make a little girl feel special, still serves pie like it matters. You want to know what I see? I see home." The word hung between them like a bridge. Neither was sure they could cross. Home. Sarah had forgotten what that felt like. Not a place but a person. Not walls, but warmth. "I'm leaving tomorrow," Jack said quietly. "Heading back to Montana. Got a small spread up there, nothing fancy. But it's mine, free and clear. Good neighbors, clean air, mountains that make you remember how small your troubles really are." He paused, his eyes never leaving hers. "Come with me." The invitation hit her like lightning, illuminating possibilities she'd buried under layers of self-protection. "I can't. I barely know you. This is crazy." Crazy's just another word for brave when you're talking about the right things. Jack smiled, and the expression transformed his entire face. "I'm not asking you to marry me tomorrow, Sarah. I'm asking you to take a chance on something better than hiding in this diner for the rest of your life. What if you change your mind? What if you wake up one morning and can't stand to look at me? What if I don't? What if you wake up one morning and realize you're worth more than the worst thing that ever happened to you? The questions hung in the air like competing prayers. Sarah thought about her small apartment above the diner. The walls she'd painted beige because it was safe and neutral and forgettable. She thought about the dreams she'd abandoned, the art classes she'd quit, the photography that had once made her feel alive. All of it buried under the weight of believing she was too damaged to deserve beauty in her life. I'd need time to think. Take all the time you need. I'll be at the roadside motel tonight. Room 12. If you decide to take that chance, I'll be waiting. If not, he shrugged, but she caught the flicker of vulnerability in his eyes. Well, I'll understand. He left money on the table, too much for pie and coffee, and stood to go. At the door, he turned back. Sarah? That little girl was right. You are a pretty lady. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. The bell chimed his departure, leaving Sarah alone with the echo of words she'd never expected to hear again. She touched her cheek, feeling the familiar landscape of scars, but for the first time in 3 years, she wondered if they told a story of survival rather than damage. The evening shift passed in a blur of routine tasks and racing thoughts. Every time the bell chimed, her heart jumped, but Jack didn't return. By closing time, she'd convinced herself a dozen times that he was just another drifter with a smooth line and empty promises. But then, she'd remember the way he'd looked at her, really looked, without flinching or turning away, and doubt crept in around the edges of her certainty. She locked up the diner and climbed the narrow stairs to her apartment, each step heavy with the weight of decision. The rooms felt smaller than usual, the beige walls pressing in like a gentle suffocation. She stood before the bathroom mirror, studying her reflection with new eyes. The scars were still there, still prominent, still a permanent reminder of that terrible night. But maybe Jack was right. Maybe they told a story of strength rather than shame. In her bedroom closet, buried behind work uniforms and sensible shoes, she found the camera she'd abandoned 3 years ago, a Canon EOS that had once been her most prized possession, the tool she'd used to capture beauty in unexpected places. Her fingers traced the familiar weight of it, muscle memory awakening after long sleep. She thought about Montana, mountains and clean air, and a man who saw beauty where others saw damage. It was insane, reckless, the kind of leap that led to broken hearts and shattered dreams. It was also the first thing that had felt like hope in 3 years. The roadside motel sat like a forgotten promise on the edge of town, its neon sign flickering against the star-drunk sky. Room 12 was dark, but Jack's truck sat in the parking space outside, patient as its owner. Sarah sat in her car for 20 minutes, engine running, hands gripping the steering wheel like a lifeline. Finally, she turned off the engine and walked to the door. Her knock was soft, uncertain. Footsteps approached and the door opened to reveal Jack in jeans and a white t-shirt, his hair still damp from a shower. He didn't look surprised to see her, just quietly pleased, as if he'd been expecting this moment all along. "I brought my camera," she said, holding up the case like evidence of her decision. "Good. Montana's got some views worth capturing. I don't know if I can do this. Leave everything behind, start over. What if we take it one day at a time? What if we see where the road leads without mapping out every mile?" He stepped aside, inviting her in. "What if you stop asking what if and start asking why not?" The motel room was simple, clean, anonymous. But Jack's presence filled it with warmth, with possibility. Sarah set down her camera case and turned to face him, this stranger who saw her more clearly than people who'd known her for years. "Why me?" she asked. "You could have anyone." "I don't want anyone. I want you, the woman who survived fire and kept her kindness. The woman who makes little girls feel special and serves pie like it's communion. The woman who's brave enough to walk into a stranger's motel room because she's finally ready to bet on herself." He was right. That's what this was, a bet on herself, on the possibility that she was worth more than the sum of her scars. Sarah reached up and touched his face, tracing the small scar above his eyebrow. "Tell me about Tornado." Jack smiled, covering her hand with his. "I'll tell you all my stories, if you'll tell me yours. The real ones, not just the sad parts. I want to know about the woman you were before the fire, and the woman you're becoming after it." "That might take a while." "I've got time. We've got time." The kiss was gentle, tentative, a question asked and answered without words. Sarah felt something crack open in her chest, not breaking but blooming, like a flower pushing through concrete. When they parted, she was crying, but for the first time in 3 years, they were tears of relief rather than sorrow. "So we're really doing this, running away together like characters in a movie." "We're not running away, we're running towards something. There's a difference." Outside, the neon sign flickered and buzzed, casting pink and blue shadows through the thin curtains. Sarah thought about the diner, about giving notice, about packing up a life she'd built from the ashes of the old one. It should have felt overwhelming, but instead it felt like shedding skin that had grown too tight. "I'll need a few days to arrange things. I'll wait, however long it takes. What if I change my mind? Then I'll be disappointed, but I'll understand. This has to be your choice, Sarah, not mine, not anyone else's. Yours." She nodded, understanding the weight of that responsibility. For 3 years, she'd let fear make her choices, let shame dictate her boundaries. Now she had the chance to choose differently, to bet on hope instead of hiding from hurt. "I want to take pictures again," she said suddenly. "Real pictures, not just snapshots. I want to remember what it feels like to see beauty and capture it." "Montana's got plenty of beauty to capture, and so do you." They talked until dawn, sharing stories and dreams and the comfortable silences that come when two people recognize something essential in each other. Jack told her about his ranch, about the horses he was planning to raise, about mornings when the mountains caught fire with sunrise. Sarah told him about her photography, about the art classes she'd loved, about the woman she'd been before fear convinced her to make herself small. When the sun finally crested the horizon, painting the motel room in shades of gold and possibility, Sarah knew her choice was made. Not because Jack had convinced her, but because she'd finally convinced herself that she deserved more than survival. She deserved joy, love, beauty, all the things she'd thought the fire had burned away forever. 3 days later, she stood in the diner for the last time, her camera bag slung over her shoulder and a single suitcase by her feet. The new owner, a young couple with big dreams and bigger hearts, had promised to keep the apple pie recipe and the corner booth where everything had changed. Jack waited by his truck, patient as always, but she could see the anticipation in the set of his shoulders, the way his eyes tracked her movement through the window. When she stepped outside, he smiled, and the expression was like sunrise over mountains she'd never seen, but somehow recognized as home. "Ready?" he asked, taking her suitcase. Sarah looked back at the diner one last time, at the life she was leaving behind. Then she looked at Jack, at the open road stretching toward Montana, at the camera in her hands that would help her remember this moment forever. "Ready," she said, and meant it. The truck pulled away from the curb, carrying them toward mountains and mornings, and the kind of love that sees scars as stories of survival rather than shame. In the passenger seat, Sarah raised her camera and captured the road ahead, the first photograph of her new life, proof that sometimes the most beautiful journeys begin with the courage to believe you deserve them. As the miles rolled past and the landscape opened into something vast and welcoming, Sarah understood that Jack had been right about one thing. She was beautiful, not despite her scars, but because of everything they represented, her strength, her survival, her willingness to keep walking through fire and come out the other side still capable of love. And maybe that's what real beauty is. Not the absence of damage, but the presence of courage. Not perfection, but the willingness to be perfectly, imperfectly human. Not hiding from the light, but stepping into it and letting it illuminate all the ways you've learned to shine. If this story touched something in you, if it reminded you that your own scars tell stories of strength rather than shame, then you understand what Sarah discovered on that road to Montana. We all have fires we've walked through, marks that map our journey from who we were to who we're becoming. The question isn't whether we'll be scarred, it's whether we'll let those scars become proof of our capacity to heal, to hope, to love again, despite everything that tried to convince us we weren't worthy of such gifts.